Don't you know, apples only grow in FINGLAS by George Fitzgerald. The following days and weeks vanished as if they had never appeared at all. Everything was a haze, a daydream, or a fantasy. I began to spend more time alone. In the evenings I would lie in the back garden, sketching love hearts on paper, putting Sandra's name inside. Then I'd scribble it out not to leave any evidence, sitting under an umbrella in my daydream world. I felt safe and comfortable. The tenderness I'd not known appeared. I welcomed it and hid it like a man burying treasure. The pen is mightier than the sword, I heard Ma say many times. So I decided to write a letter. I pulled a pen from the drawer. I placed the white paper on the table. I stared at it. It wasn't my forte, writing letters to young women. I stared at that paper again, as if I was nervous or walking into a place I'd never known. I thought about it. And then I looked at the paper and scanned over it for the second time. Then I placed it on the table and I wrote. It began to speak to me. I felt a liberating power rush through me. It was the character that inspired me, and for the tiniest of moments that smiled at me, I didn't feel like a stupid boy. The boy from the Dunce's Row, the Dunce's Corner in Ballymun, and the Bad Row in Finglas, may I say. And what I wrote was, in the orchard of dreams, in the world of men, one, the finest of specimens, was given to us as a gift. In that garden of perfection, a woman. Later, I wrote another one, but this time I got Pat, my younger brother, to help me with the spellings, because it wasn't my thing. It was one of those sit in the back garden days. That's when I sat and pondered. Maybe I should have wrote it in French. I didn't speak French. We didn't cover that in school. Joseph did. Should I ask him? Would he be interested in jotting the old letter down there in French? Finally I decided against it. After I put the idea away, I let the hours pass. The night slept and the morning appeared. I lay there thinking about why I felt so happy as I did. I was caught in a waiting scene, but I couldn't explain. I thought about the day we moved here to Finglas, and how it was in those days that seemed now like a lifetime ago. The tower, the 10th floor, we're living in the sky. The last days we did that. I held the lift door open while Dad pushed boxes in. The boxes had tape on top. I remember that. Cardboard boxes, tape on top, pulled tight in a lift on the 10th floor, going down to the ground, never to return. That, surprisingly, was almost 10 years ago. And I pondered how quickly those years had gone. Gone as smoke goes up a chimney. Dad was downstairs. I knew that because I could smell sausages being cooked. Dad always cooked breakfast on Sundays. And because it was Sunday, that meant the paper boy would be out and about delivering his papers door to door. So I jumped on the bike and cycled through the streets looking for him. Once I reached the block, I waited. And sure enough, like clockwork, there he was. Here, did you get a paper in that house? Which house? There, that one there. That one over there? I looked at him. Yeah, that one over there. Yeah, they do, yeah. Okay, do me a favour. What is it? Will you give this to that bird that lives in there if she opens the door? Oh, yeah. Sandra, is it? Yeah. Do you know her? Yeah. Will you give her that? Now, don't give it to nobody else. I handed him the letter. I gave him £2. Yeah, no bother, 20, yeah. We'll do that for you. And off he went. I waited for a few moments. He came out and gave me a wave and moved next door. That night the streets were deserted. I sat on a wall and waited for her. She usually came home around this time, I thought. Although it was early, darkness was creeping in. Then I saw her disappear down a lane. I jumped off the wall and ran. When I reached the lane, I heard rough voices. Spotting her, I noticed she looked startled. Sandra glanced over her shoulder and hurried away. I passed the gang before exiting the lane. I wondered, and I crept up on her, careful not to alarm her any further. She paused and looked behind her. Daylight dimmed. Clouds gathered and the wind joined in. It was the only voice that could be heard as we stood in that silent moment. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," she said, with a quiver. "There was a gang. I got a fright, that's all. Listen, I'll be standing at the wall every night. So, if you want, I'll walk down with you." She opened her eyes wide. I swallowed hard. She pondered, I could see that. "Can I ask you a favour?" "Yeah, what is it?" "If you walk home with me, will you let me at a distance? That's all it'll be. I have a boyfriend." "Yeah, that's alright." I never imagined she'd be my girlfriend anyway. But, as people say, you can live in hope. "Can I walk with you now?" She hesitated, but smiled and said yes. "Who are you looking at, dopey?" cried a voice. I wasn't looking at anybody, but I knew the voice was addressed to me. I stepped away from Sandra and looked. It was Weetabix, one of Johnny B. Good's pals, come out of nowhere. I didn't know where nowhere was, but wherever it was, he came out of it. Chapter 2. He shuffled towards me and threw a boot into the air. Now when I say threw a boot into the air, I don't mean he took off his boot and fired it into the sky. No, he did that Bruce Lee thing, without the cat sounds that Bruce Lee made. He dressed in Dexy's Midnight Runners dungarees. Remember Dexy's? The English outfit that had hits like Come On Eileen and Gino. They wore soft blue dungarees like Grandpa and the Waltons. I didn't think Weetabix was a fan of Dexy's, and I couldn't envision him sitting watching the Waltons. "Good night, John boy," and all that. But he did wear those dungarees. He violently bumped into me. There was no reason for this. That's what guys like Weetabix did. "Is there something wrong?" he screamed. "Is there something wrong?" throwing his hands into the air. He held a bottle of cider in one hand, I could see that. He took a swig and stared at me through a sideward glance. It was one of those OK Corral stare-downs. "Not at the moment, Weetabix. Not at the moment." I felt his gaze in the back of my neck as I walked away. I tipped Sandra's shoulder and whispered, "Come on, let's get out of here." "What are you, chicken or what, 20? 20 the box of chicken." I gave him an over-shoulder glance and saw them walking up and down. Now, Weetabix had a way of walking. He swung his right hand out one way, his left hand went out the other, and both foot followed each hand. Those words rang in my ear. "George, Joseph. I knew boys like that in Ballyfermot. Nothing ever good came of them. Walk away, son." I kept my eye on him and tipped my hat back. He smeared the cider from his mouth with his right hand and stared at me wildly. There's a lot I wanted to say to the chap, to have a talk with him. I'd prefer to have as we called it, a telephone box conversation. Box in terms, I mean. "Is that boy calling you again?" she asked faintly. I could tell from her tone that she hoped he wasn't. I paused and she squeezed my hand. That's when I realised I was holding it. "Is that your boy, Twinny?" he said. And I replied with a silent voice. My mind went into overdrive. Is that a question or is that a threat? I looked at this perfectly formed 14-year-old, her eyes faint blue, her hair long, beautiful. She knew the neighbourhood, but she didn't know the streets. "Are you deaf?" he blasted. "Let's get out of here," I muttered as I turned away, still holding her hand. "Will you come after us?" "That's Rice Crispy," she said nervously. "Ha ha!" "What? Nah, don't be worrying. He's a cereal box." "All right, don't be worrying. There's nothing to him," I laughed. "Is there something in my eye?" I turned. She looked closely and closer still, and I looked and noticed he was gone. "No, I can't see anything. It's too dark," she replied. Yeah, neither can I. It was only a fly. Only a fly, George. Were you afraid? Nah, I got things in me eye before. She stopped, withdrew, pulled her hand away and burst out laughing. You've some sense of humour, she said between each breath. I'm a man full of surprises, I replied. The mind, the wondrous working power of the mind. If seconds can be measured, I enter the smallest of them. From there on the streets, in my neighbourhood, amidst the kids playing, hall doors open, the sounds, a host of them, surrounding us, I envisioned her running, barefoot, along the beach. She held sandals in her hand and looked back and laughed. My sleepwalk moment was interrupted when the car came speeding by us. It was only a 10-minute walk to our house, but I wanted to walk it as slowly as I could. All the nervous talk disappeared, and we began to enjoy the first few moments of calm conversation. I wondered about the letter. Did she know it was me? Then I looked across the road and noticed Timothy Anderson. For me, in my world, where I was, I could almost hear the theme music of Jaws, because it was like a shark was coming towards me. He walked in quick steps. He relaxed his pace, turned his face into a car window and smiled. Timothy wet the tips of his hair back, the ones that was falling in the front. He pushed his fingers along his tongue and tipped them back again. Then he brushed his eyebrows. You look lovely, Sandra, he beamed as he approached us. Timothy was a year younger than me, about 17, and as I said, Sandra was 14, so I was the old man there. At 18, the penny dropped. I was the precursor, the forerunner for someone else's dream. Timothy Anderson was a boy who had his head stuck in a book. He looked mature with a full head of blonde hair, golden, some may say, and a fine physique and narrow waist. To the right, two youths crossed the street dressed in caps and polo necks. Here, Twinny, I want you for a minute, they called. Timothy was moving closer, like the shark he was when it came to women. With a quick motion of my hand, I bid the boys to walk on. Go on a walkabouts, lads. They got the message and jogged on. How's studies going? Are they coming along well? Are you reading the book I told you about? He asked Sandra. Not me. Of course it wasn't me. I didn't know this guy well. I knew what he was like. And the last time I ever read a book was like, never. No, but I think it's on my curriculum next year, she replied. Well, I would suggest you get it and read it. Do you have a copy? No. He stood back, placed his hand on his chin and muttered to himself, as if he was an inspector judging something. Rubbed his chin hard again. Do you know what? I just happen to have a copy at home. I'll drop it down to you, he quickly added. Look, there's no need, she replied shyly. Oh, this is my friend George. My heart gladdened the moment. It warmed in that second. It was a surprise gesture when she used the word friend. It was encased in innocence. I looked at her, and the innocence was there for all to see. And I thought about the word again. This is my friend, George. Yes, the boxer fella. Now listen, I'll come down and help you with the book if you need help. I bet you will, I thought, looking at him sharply. He dismissed my glance as he did my presence. I stood on his toe. It was an accident, a slip of the foot, so to speak. Oh, you stood on my toe, he yelled. You're quick. Brains to burn, I muttered. Sorry, I can be a bit clumsy, Timmy boy. He dismissed my apology, turned quickly and said, Do you want me to walk down with you? I'm going down there to see a mate. Not far from where you live. I'll walk home with you, Sandra. I felt a stabbing pain. I'd have rather if Weetabix would have hit me with a hammer. She looked from me to him and back again. Listen, I better be going. Sure, the boys will probably be looking for me, he said, lowering my eyes, not to meet theirs. I walked away with my hands in my pocket, cap pushed down. When I looked back, I noticed her brother, Robert, and his girlfriend, Grania, standing on the street waiting for her. She said something to Anderson, left him there and ran across the street, her fish-tail skirt swaying in the breeze. Then she turned and waved at me. Chapter 3. Some people, not everyone, some people called us corner boys. Others called us the lads. As I said before, there was me, Weller, Paulo, Pat, Joseph, Gip, Beanie, Ray, not to mention Thomas, Paulie, Noel, Tucker and Michael, Tony, Derek and Mick, Kojak, both Cocos and Anto. Among us was Lorraine, Martina, Sinead, Mary, who was once my girlfriend, Terry, Martina, as I said, Margot. Margot's friends were Carol and Paula. Carol lived in the same block as us when we lived in the sky in the tower in Ballymun in those days. The freshness of our youth did not sweep in overnight or evaporate in the morning. No, it was a long-lasting experience. At least that's what we thought. We didn't go to college, none of us did, or read books or magazines, or sit in a career guidance teacher's office, or into a lecturer's hall, listening to the one-time movers and shakers in the business world telling us how to succeed. We didn't visit libraries. We left the confession box empty, unless we felt the need, and sometimes that was the case. Life was our reward, the freshness of our youth, our best friend, which to our teenage minds was here to stay. Music was our constant companion, the ghetto blaster, our closest friend. We listened to Marley. We wrote his name on the walls. His name was on a lot of walls, Bob. We listened to his voice, the rhythm, the beat, and how he looked at and talked about social injustice, the problems of the oppressed, especially those who are discriminated against and treated unfairly, as the police would come in and search us from time to time for no reason other than we lived where we lived. The lyrics from Marley and the Wailers, so much things to say, 1977, stuck with me. One of the lyrics did. They've got so much to say. They've got so much things to say. I'll never forget, no way, how they crucified Jesus Christ. There was a dance on the school at 8 o'clock. But we didn't get overexcited because the chances of any of us getting in was highly unlikely. So we played cards, sat and joked, talked about the latest hit singles, while Gip, Beanie, Thomas, Ray chatted about football. I knew Sandra would be there at that dance. I wondered about her boyfriend. And I knew somehow that Timmy fella would sneak in. But there wasn't much I could do. We'd failed many times to get past the grounds, let alone into the dance. So there's no even point trying. I got up, we played nearest to the wall, then I rambled her out and met John Malone, a friend, and off we headed down to the school and later down to the far set where he lived. Spent the afternoon with John. On the way home I met Collie. Collie Lawrence was a friend who stood over 6 foot tall. We were both serving our times. He was a painter while I was a plasterer. We worked for different firms. But we both attended Bolton Street College on Mondays. A few weeks later, Collie and I decided not to go to college, so we waited for the off licence to open. When it did, we bought cider, sat on the canals until Collie had to leg it down to Paddy's Pet Shop in Parnell Street to pick up the birds, in which he had promised his younger brother he would. Collie said he'd jump off the bus on the way back and give me a tip and we'd head home together, but he fell asleep on the bus and so did I, on the banks of the Royal Canal. I woke about 7 o'clock with my face half burned from the sun. The other half was as white as a ghost. When I got home, I told Ma that I had been walking outside. The only problem was that I was partially in the shade. Ma handed me my dinner and said, "You can trust a thief." She leaned closer, "But you can never trust a liar." I thought, I bet the shopkeeper would have a different opinion on that. Collie was like us. He came from Ballymun and he lived in the estate across the road. We called it the Purchased. Everyone did, the Purchased estate, because everyone who lived there had bought their houses whereas we rented. No one in our estate ever bought them. That would all come later, and eventually everybody would be purchased. Collie's mother and father are lovely people, tall and thin, very respectful. It was like they'd come to visit Finglas, never planning to stay, but they did, for many, many years. They were the people that stood out, and at the same time they stood in. All wonderful and lovely people, very kind and welcoming. And yet when I say college, I wonder about that, because they said we didn't go. Bolton Street was different. It was all about the works and the crafts of hands, really. Plastering, the art, more to do with a craft rather than a trade, but yet it fell under the whole title of trade. Georgie, the plasterer, Collie, the painter. Friends for life. Chapter 4. Sonny survived the assault. The blade that struck him missed his jugular, but it left a lasting memory, a thick scar. A thick scar that no amount of soap could wash away. The boy who cut Sonny will wake up in a dormitory in the middle of the night to find another inmate searching his belongings. He would pull a pair of scissors from underneath the pillow and stab the boy repeatedly. Stab, 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 until the boy was no longer alive. Sonny was blessed to have escaped with just a scar. It was Friday night. Joe, Pat and I were in town playing pool. Joe glanced at the clock. "Where's Sonny? I thought he was going to meet us here," he asked Pat, who in turn asked me the same question. And given Sonny's characteristics, I said he'd be here. Maybe he got detained. The night passed quickly and it was getting late. Well, when I say late, it was 8 o'clock. Ma wanted Pat home for 9, so we placed the cues on the table and left. When we got home, our Uncle Packy was there, sitting in the sitting room by the fire, talking to Dad about politics, employment, employers, high taxes and low wages. "What's the story, Packy?" I said as I walked in through the doors. "How are you, Packy?" Joe said. "Hey, Packy," Pat said, and off they went upstairs. "Which one do you want to hear? The one about the 3 bears?" he laughed, replying. "Did you ever hear the one about Goldilocks?" Packy had been a boxer. He wore a broken nose to prove it, but he had brains to burn. That's what my ma said. He loved to talk about books. So did my ma and Dad. Dad read books, so did my ma. I sat and listened to them talk about the famine, books on the famine. They turned the conversation to Joyce and the books on the Dubliners. Packy said it was the best piece of English literature ever written. Then he talked about Bean, the Borstal boy. I loved hearing those stories. Went up, made a cup of coffee and pulled over the chair and sat and listened as Packy talked about the old English language and how wonderful and how colourful it was. He read the King James Version of the Bible. It was the King James Version. I wondered about that. King James Version. I thought, why would he read that? Is he a Protestant? I knew that much. He wasn't. He talked about the language of it. Then he talked about Dickens was a genius. My ma said, she cut in, said that. Yeah, he mastered shorthand, Dad said. He wrote Oliver when he was only 22 years of age. He added, Packy jokingly recited some of Dickens' work in the old English language. We laughed. I thought it was great. I really did. Thought it was great. Sonny had been given a Bible when he got out of jail. And then he gave me one. And again, it was the old English language, the King James, as it was said, my dad said. He said God was talking to him. That's what Sonny said. I thought he was nuts. But I went upstairs and pulled it out from under the bed, the one he gave me, the one. And I looked at it, those pictures in it. But then I went in and got the one that was in Dad's room. There was bigger pictures than that. And I looked at the pictures, thought the pictures was great. The one Sonny gave me was old, it was really tattered, but the one my dad had was bigger and thicker. Confess with your mouth, Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you'll be saved. They were the words that I read I liked those words, so I walked around the room like Packy, speaking it out. But it didn't sound great in a Dublin accent, so I repeated it. Believe in your heart. Believe in your heart. I began to start constantly saying it. Confess with your mouth. The Lord Jesus. Believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead. The Dublin accent didn't sound great. The old English I couldn't put on, so I switched it to an American accent, like John Wayne. That sounded great. I thought I was John Wayne. I sat in the bed wondering if God spoke like John Wayne. I heard Packy leave, and then Dad called me from downstairs. George! When I reached the bottom step, he nodded for me to follow him into the sitting room. Ma averted my gaze. Something was up with her. Right, George, I won't waste time. I'll get straight to the point. I was on the bus the other night, and that goaty fella was in front. You want to hear the talk out with him? What talk? What do you mean? Doesn't matter. It does that. What was he saying? Something about me or Sandra? Did he say something about who? Tell me that. You? Sandra? Who's Sandra? It doesn't matter. So tell me, what did he say? That terrible talk. Terrible. If his father heard him. Shocking. He was telling some friend of his, another gobbin, about some robbery he did. He wasn't alone. Some of the guys were involved. I lowered my eyes to the ground and studied the carpet. Imagine that. When my mind went into overdrive again, I suddenly saw myself in one of those dreams. Except you're awake. I was a weary traveller living in the 18th century. I crossed the cornfield looking for a bed in an inn. I was playing a scene like a film in my head as one of those Sunday matinees. There was no room in the inn, but I sat at a table across from Goaty, who had a bowl of stew with a knife. He smiled. He was toothless, so were his friends. I wondered why I was thinking that, and lifted my eyes and heard my dad say, so the bottom line is, I don't want you or Joseph to be with him. Is Joseph out? No, he's upstairs. I think so, Dad. What were you talking about? Don't be listening to him. Okay? You know what I mean? That's it. He's all right, Dad. He's all right. Well, he's okay. He shrugged his shoulders and said, listen, I met boys like that in Ballier. I've told you this before. Nothing good ever comes of them fellas. Now walk on. Do you understand me? Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean it now. That's it. I'll have a word with Joseph fella later. I turned on the bottom step and said, Dad, who asked you with a knife in a film? Not a cowboy, an 18th century thing. Oliver Reed, when he played Bill Sykes in the musical. Oliver. Chapter 5. I wanted to give Goaty a box. See, there are the people. There are the people who know the people. And then there are the neighbourhood guys who don't know the people who know the people. Goaty was neither, but he thought he was. The plan here is to avoid the path Goaty's on. Why? Because before you know it, you'll be lying on the ground staring up at a copper, asking, what happened? How did I get here? And that was not for me. I did what I always did. I opened the window and looked out. The sounds of the day that had hurried around us were hushed. The voice of the kids at play asleep. The distant traffic, so low, barely audible. The evening air brushed against my face, touching my skin. I closed the window and lay on the bed. Ma stuck her head in the door and whispered, say a prayer for a special intention. I nodded and did as asked. The whirling thoughts blowing around me like paper in the wind. The next day, I was back in the corner, watching Goaty walk towards us. He was lord of all the earth, or at least that's what he thought. His shoulders held back, his head so high that the top of his crown touched the clouds. He had 3 other boys with him, who were dressed rather distasteful. In rags, may I say. Here, you missed it last night. We robbed the gaff. Anto got shot, but he's okay. Sonny and him got locked up, and I got away, he said, smiling. Shut your big mouth, I roared. What? What did you say? You heard me. Now shut your mouth. His 3 friends stood there with clenched fists. Tom and Joe did the same thing. It was clear that they seen us as enemies. But however I may say this, that the day was a bright day, but the sky should have shed tears. It should have bawled. Oh yes, it should have wailed like a mother, weeping, a weeping mother with weeping eyes, expressing itself so visibly for all to see. Why? Why, I heard you say. I remember the day Goaty and I met, Joe and Thomas and Pat. The young kid who grabbed Thomas' hat and ran, the wild boy with the sticky up hair. Now, here we were facing each other, zigzagging in a world of mind games that's only played in the playground that we know. Will he throw the first punch, a headbutt or a boot? Are his pals carrying weapons? Is there something there that I need to avoid? This is not why I looked for a weeping sky. Why I did was because, as teenagers, nothing more was expected of us. There was nothing for us to be expecting of. There was no promise from governments or councillors or people of authority of some bright future. But what was expected of us was to be exactly where we were, facing each other down. An interrupted silence was caught between the stairs. The stairs we shared from boys to almost men. We were not men, but yet we were nearly there. Goaty, you heard me, right? And you're not going to do anything about it, so shut your mouth. Everything went quiet. But Goaty broke the silence by telling us the story anyway. He wasn't going to let that moment escape. It was like a trophy he wore. He loved it. It's part of the neighbourhood sometimes. We parked the car in the field, a half mile away from the gaff, and then we crawled along the field towards it. The gaff, I mean. Don't make any noise, son, he shouted in a whisper to Anto as we crossed the back garden, as if he was going to make a noise. I'm not a chick, you know what I mean, sonny? Anto replied, speaking through his nose. And I thought, what are you speaking through? Sonny muttered a few curses when his foot went down a black hole, but we kept moving until we reached the back door. You know where a lot of these blokes keep their money, Sonny said to Anto as he stood on the other side of the door. In the bank. Yeah, right, Goaty. It wasn't me, it was Anto asked the question before we knew where we were. We were crawling in through a window, crisscross glass. We got into there. Here, hold on, onto the crowbar, and I'll pop all these off those other doors in front of us. Grabbing the handle, he began to pull towards us. Pulling this, it was like a rhythm, like he was moving with a rhythm, like he was listening to a song. The boys with Goaty stood staring at us. I was getting angry, I listened to his crap. Yeah, Goaty, you're only a mouth, Nolly, our neighbour shouted as he passed. He's a mouth, I thought to myself as Nolly walked on. But Goaty was not being put off. He just kept going, talking about old couches and fields and houses and how they did this and how they did that, and went into a big elaborate story, drawing her out, until I felt like I was being choked. Then he told us about the farmer running with a shotgun and shooting, and pellets going off into the sky, and then pellets going into Anto's arm, and the police coming and him running through rivers and getting away. And then he told us the story about Johnny Be Good, the one you heard. Where'd you hear that? I heard it. Yeah, I know you heard it, you told me, but where did you hear it? I heard it when I got on the bus, right? They were all down the back, you know, those fellas from the west, his mates, they were all there talking, they were all there drinking, they were passing stuff around, they were drinking the cider, and 2 litres, and they were legging it, and here, they told the story, Goaty. Told the story about Goaty? No, I mean, told the story, they didn't tell it to me, but I heard him. Heard what? He's gone. Johnny Be Good is gone. Gone where, Tom asked. Goaty pointed up to the sky. What happened to I cut in? Put it this way. I bet he didn't fall off a skateboard. Tom added. Chapter 6. The next morning I hung on the front gate listening to the radio give out Johnny Be Good's real name. and his age and what took place. He was 19 years old. I heard the vegetable man hollering, but my daydream was broken into when I noticed a young girl heading in my direction. Now that's a pretty sight, the vegetable man beamed, while the boys ran into the gardens, placing cartons of eggs on the front step, and they both looked around also. I know her family. That's Sandra. All the lads like her. Look, he smiled, gently tipping the rim of my hat. I was wearing a grandfather shirt, blue jeans, and that porcupine hat of mine. I adjusted my vision, taking a deep breath. My heart skipped a beat, as I felt a familiar sense of joy. "Hi, how's it going?" she said softly. Her hair was tied in a bow. She wore long earrings and a short dress. In a few short weeks I hadn't seen her, she matured. I mentioned it jokingly. She blushed, turned her head and smiled. The sound of the streets awoke. They settled on us as both of us basked in the warm sun. There were too many hidden faces hanging around us, so I broke the silence by giving her a suggestion. "Do you want to go for a walk?" "Well, I'm going up to the shop." "Then I'll walk with you," she said, sheepishly. So off we went, walking side by side past the cluster of houses along the narrow road until it emptied itself of the working class world. I had my hand behind my back, trying desperately to think of the things to say that a 14-year-old girl would be interested in. Didn't think that Weetabix and Goaty story would be the thing you would talk about. Maybe that would come later. We walked for some time until we reached the grounds of a local hospital to the right, beautiful garden with a timber fence. Sandra was a bit reluctant, but I persuaded her to come in and rest. I sat on a cushion of tiny yellow flowers, as did she. While we sat across from each other, with our back against the tree, she leaned over and took off my hat, placed it on her head. "What is it like to be a boxer?" she asked, balancing the hat on her head. "Well, boxing gloves and rings," I replied, laughing. "You know that's not what I meant," she said, tipping my arm gently. "All right. There's the canvas that pulls on your legs, the rope burns the back of your neck, you feel the most horrible fear imaginable. And the cold, it's not great either, out there doing road work at all hours in the morning." Her eyes screwed up. "You're so afraid. Why did you do it?" "Courage is fear strangled. Everybody feels it. It's part of the game. It's not always there. It's just before you enter the ring. Anyway, forget all that." "Are you good in school?" I asked, placing a little flower behind her ear because we were very close for school. "I'm not sure. I'm honours in the box," she replied. "I got honours in the box, may I add," she replied. "I knew who you were the day you approached me in the schoolyard. Everybody does. Twinnies, the boxers. Yeah, I knew you as well. But see, your homework, your schoolwork, keep going at it. Were you good in school?" she asked. She knew I was left. "Yeah, I was a special sort of kid. They put me in a special role, gave me special names. A sort of butterfly, ladybird as we call it. Well, I saw both of them. I picked up the ladybird, placed it on a leaf. It's pretty," she said. Then I turned towards her and noted a great look of surprise on her face. And look at his eyes. He appears sorrowful, she said, moving closer. "You know what I think of a lot?" "What's that?" she asked. "Think about the stars." "The stars?" she said, looking at me, even more strange. "Yeah, and lots more. I often wonder how many stars there are. Where does the snow go in the summer? And why do the animals not have reason like us? And the sea, where it starts and how does it know where to stop? So you're a deep thinker, I suppose. That's pretty special." She walked to a brown fence where the horse was. She removed the bow allowing her long hair to fall freely. I stood for a moment and asked her, jokingly, if she'd like a dance. Yeah, like to dance, she asked, caressing her forehead, trying desperately not to laugh. Only in the company of another dancer. There was a moment's silence that was followed by laughter. The light wind blew across her hair as she leaned across. She turned quickly towards me, brushing the hair off her face. It was a perfect moment, a combination of bright eyes and calm day. What happened with your boyfriend? I asked as we walked home. I'm seeing him tonight, so I decided not to push the boyfriend thing. When I reached the school, we met our friends. They stood talking, laughing. Someone was looking for you earlier, Sandra, Bob said. Then I heard, who? Some fella. Timothy Anderson. He was there with us talking to us for ages. I think I'm in love. The other one beamed. A mother passed carrying messages. Our kids danced around her. Did you get me fruit, Ma? The apples I asked for. She looked at me. She turned and glanced at Sandra. She looked at me again, as if she could interpret what was in my eyes, as our words were carried away by the wind. Her eyes still focused on me. No, love. Moore Street was all out of them. She paused, winked at me and said, don't you know, apples only grow in FINGLAS.